all of you. We really appreciate you once again joining us, spending your lunchtime with the North Florida Clean Fuels Coalition to learn a bit more about clean fuels. The North Florida Clean Fuels Coalition is a 501c3 nonprofit, independent, unbiased clearinghouse that brings you information on all things clean fuels and supporting your fleet's efforts to diversify into using clean fuels like electricity, uh, renewable diesel, biodiesel, propane, natural gas, hydrogen. The coalition is fuel neutral. We understand that it's important to choose the right fuel for the right application, and there's no one size fit all solution. So we bring you from time to time these webinars digging into different aspects of clean fuels, the hope that you're getting the information you need to make the decisions that work best for your fleet. The coalition has been around for over 10 years, and we're proud that North Florida is a national leader in per capita use of clean fuels. We have one of the largest LNG fueled logistics operations in the world, and we have many fleets using clean fuels very successfully all around North Florida. And you can join the movement. So um, really happy for you to be here today. We also have a Clean Fuels Master Plan that we published last year that analyzes the opportunities that exist for a variety of fleets around Northeast Florida to use clean fuels cost effectively. Some of the solutions that are highlighted in that master plan you'll hear more about today from our guests, who I'll introduce in a moment. But I want to say that if you're a fleet that has questions, you'd like to understand what the business cases are for clean fuels in your fleet, it's really as simple as reaching out to us and asking us for help, because we're here, we're ready to do that for you, and would love to give you the information you need to make a good decision. I'm Ben Moore. I'm with RSNH. I'm a consultant to the North Florida TPO and the Clean Fuels Coalition, and I'll be the host for today's program. And we have a really excellent program today. I mentioned that our coalition boasts being uh, one of the most successful in per capita use of clean fuels. But today we're talking to an entity that can boast about per capita or just, raw use of a lots of clean fuels. We're going to be talking to the New York City fleets. We've got Gary Prasad, who's Director of Field Operations for the New York Department of Citywide Administrative Services. And we've got his colleague Harris Kaplan, who's Executive Director of Operations for the New York City Fleet, also with the New York City Department of Citywide Administrative Services. These gentlemen have their hands in operating the largest municipal fleet in the country. And I think, as you'll see, and they'll argue, one of the most, if not the most sustainable fleet in the country, using a variety of alternative fuels very successfully in all kinds of applications, even some applications that lots of folks might think are difficult or maybe too hard to do. But I'm not sure that Frank Sinatra had it in mind when he said, I'm not sure Frank Sinatra had clean fuels in mind when he said, if you can make it in New York, you can make it anywhere. But I think by the end of this presentation, you'll be convinced that Frank did have clean fuels in mind, because Gary and Harris are proving that they can make it happen in the biggest city in the United States. So with that, I'm happy to pass it over to Gary to start to introduce you to how the city of New York is using clean fuels throughout its fleet.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Gary Prasad. I'm the Director of Field Operations here at New York City DCAS. Basically, what I do is oversee multiple uh, systems and multiple operations going on throughout the city, whether it be our telematics systems, our vehicle safety equipment through our Vision Zero program, fueling, in-house fueling under the guidance of Harris Kaplan and his team. Um, and I'm going to share my screen now so that we can show you some fleet by the numbers. So here we go, and here we go. So this is a cross section of New York City's fleet. We have garbage trucks, we have police interceptors, we have ambulances, we have passenger cars. What is one thing? Well, one thing that three of these vehicles all have in common, they're all electric. We have the Ford Mustang Mach-E police package. We have the fully electric Mack uh, uh, 25-yarder garbage truck, and we have a vehicle that I actually use on a regular basis, a 2019 Chevy Bolt EV. And over here we have a relatively new FDNY ambulance, which runs off of renewable diesel. And you too can own one of these vehicles. They're in stores. Greenlight and Darden Group are actually replicating these vehicles on a more miniature scale. So we have the garbage truck, the Parks Department, PEP, Police Enforcement Unit for the parks, the Hot Pursuit, Mach-E, Highway Patrol, as well as some of the more vintage vehicles that you see here from Fire Department. So, fleet by the numbers. We are a little less than 30,000 vehicles citywide, 57 agencies and offices, 164 million miles driven in a year, and 25 million gallons of fuel used. That includes our Department of Sanitation, NYPD, FDNY, Sanitation, Department of Transportation, Office of Emergency Management, what have you. Our fleet numbers by staffing: 1678 fleet staff size, 1368 mechanics, 97 garages. At the time of this, there was 248,000 work orders open, uh, actively being closed by mechanics. 175 agency ATCs. There's 21,000 fleet units using alternative fuels. By alternative, we mean renewable diesel. We mean electric, plug-in hybrid. And here we have 14 million gallons of renewable diesel used within the year, 405 liquid fueling dispensing sites. What does that mean? We are the city's largest gas station. We buy renewable diesel, we pump it through our stations. Sanitation, every Department of Sanitation location has, if it has a truck, it has a fuel island. Same thing with DOT, same thing with DEP and the Parks Department alike.
And Gary, I'd like to again thank you for presenting this deck. But I did want to update the 14 million is actually now 21 million. So we're moving quickly. So thank you.
Yeah, this information was a little bit dated. Uh, Continuing on, we have our very large acquisition team, where acquisition program, run out of our office, as well as our claims division that's also run out of DCAS's fleet office. In addition to the city vehicles, we also track 10,000 school buses. The school bus companies are private companies. However, in order to do work in the five boroughs of New York City, they have to work with Department of Education's OPT, Office of Pupil Transport. Part of that is to be in agreement with DCAS fleet mandates. So whether it be 360 surround view cameras, pedestrian turn warnings, GPS tracking technology, all of that has to be installed and signed off by us on these private fleets. Our New York City Clean Fleet Plan. New York City plans to achieve 50% greenhouse gases by 2025. We've done it. It's not old news, but it's also not new news. It's something that we did, and we did it through a multiple approach process. Electrify your entire light duty fleet. You can do that today. There's enough vehicles on the market and enough charging stations that you can literally go out as a fleet manager and purchase this equipment. For your medium duty fleet, the plug-in hybrid option allows people to continue using the larger vehicles, teaching them how to plug in and getting used to it. And then furthermore, Harris will touch on a little later on, is the renewable diesel project. We went from bio to renewable. It's an American-made fuel, and it's better than bio, made by Americans, used by Americans. As I mentioned earlier, we are proponents of the Vision Zero program. We have a task force. We have multiple Vision Zero projects going on currently, many of which I work on, including 360 surround view cameras with and without DVR and AI integration, telematics tracking, car share technology, pedestrian turn warnings, and backup alarms, and also our high vision truck solution. So, oh, and how could I forget truck side guards? One of the most simplistic things in the world to protect pedestrians and vulnerable road users from large vehicles is a side guard. You can see it right here. It's a simple aluminum rail system, and it prevents people from going underneath the truck and getting run over by the back tires. Going further, we're using intelligence and telematics to track vehicle usage, to track mileage, to augment how people drive. We do that through our defensive driving curriculum, which we also do in-house. By swapping out regular gasoline vehicles, we have also seen a reduction in carbon emissions and a cost savings year over year. Here are some of the grants that we've won recently. We've won 15 million not too long ago in a federal grant to lead the largest municipal curbside EV charging program, heavy duty truck program, anti-speeding technology on city vehicles, also known as intelligent speed assist. It is basically a dynamic governor for your light duty fleet. You can set the parameters to whatever you want, so the driver can then be stuck to the confines of that roadway, plus minus 5, 10, 15, whatever it is you want. Continuing on, here are some press releases that recently were published. And I now pass the baton to Harris Kaplan to continue the discussion.
Hi, Harris Kaplan, Executive Director, Fleet Operations, NYC Fleet. My role is the fuel. I am kind of the point of contact for fuel in New York City for the city agencies. We do a very large program on the retail side. We use a company called WEX, but we also do a very large program for gasoline and diesel on our in-house side. We run over 400 in-house fueling sites. But right now, I really want to focus on renewable diesel, how we got to renewable diesel, where we are now, and our path forward. So in September of 2023, the city of New York started receiving truck deliveries of renewable diesel RD95 B5, and that's a hydrogenation derived renewable diesel. And I'll read the definition for everyone. So renewable diesel, HDRD, means a renewable combustible liquid fuel process from agricultural vegetable oils or animal fats, applying the thermo-hydro-treating process of hydrogenation that meets ASTM D975 for renewable diesel fuel blend stock for distillate fuel. So DCAS put out a spec for renewable diesel. A contractor won that bid, was awarded that, and our truck deliveries again began in September of 2023. We started out with deliveries to Department of Corrections, Department of Transportation, Department of Parks, Department of Environmental Protection, and then we slowly rolled out two of our emergency agencies, which are the New York City Police Department and the New York City Fire Department. By June of 2024, June 30th, the Fire Department and the New York Police Department were fully rolled out, and all city agencies were receiving renewable diesel deliveries daily. Since the rollout, we've used 21 million gallons of renewable diesel throughout all city agencies. And these are agencies, obviously, that run different types of diesel equipment. Your fire engines, your pumpers, your ladders. NYPD has a number of specialized vehicles that use diesel, and again, no reported issues. The Department of Sanitation has used well over 11 million gallons of renewable diesel. They're the biggest user of RD, and they have not reported any issues. And we've been through a couple of snow fighting or snow events. I call it snow fighting, but they are the strongest, and they do fight for us and to make sure our streets are cleaned. But again, sanitation is used the most. No issues with any of their vehicles, plowing, snow melters, front end loaders and any other equipment that supports snow operations. And then obviously their main job, which is just to pick up the garbage in all five boroughs. And again, no reported issues. What else can I say? We decided to take renewable diesel another step further after we saw that there were no issues with vehicles in usage. So I decided, based on some recommendations, to work with the New York City DOT ferry team, and we began a pilot in November of 2023 to test renewable diesel on one DOT ferry. And since that pilot began, we've used well over 1 million gallons in one ferry. Basically, we deliver the product to an oil barge via truck, and then the ferry oilers fuel the boat from the barge. And we've been doing this for uh, you know, well over a year, and I believe that we're going to continue to test out renewable diesel in additional ferries in the coming months. But I could tell you that prior to renewable diesel and rolling out renewable diesel in September 2023, we were using B50. We were using B50, and we were testing out B50 in one park site. I managed that project, and it was successful, and we received approval from the fire department, from New York State Department of Environmental Conservation, to run that pilot of B50. So that was another exciting new fuel for us prior to renewable diesel, and prior to this test of B50. We were using B20 and B5 at city agencies, and then going back a number of years, we were using ULSD. But so we started with ULSD, we switched to biodiesel, and then we are now using renewable diesel, and that's basically where we are now.
All right, gentlemen, thank you so much for sharing. We might as well just go into some Q&A now. Lots of information that you guys just delivered, lots to unpack. And I want to make sure the audience understands that we want to hear their questions too. The way to get your question out there is to type it into the chat. And I'm monitoring that chat, and I'll help folks get their questions answered. Of course, I have some questions too that I'll put out there in the meantime. But we do already have a couple questions in the chat that I'll pose to you all. I'll start with you, Harris, because it relates to some of the renewable diesel content you were just sharing. So you've gone relatively quickly to a high volume of 21 million gallons. That's quite a bit. So what are the economics of that? How much are you paying for renewable diesel versus the standard diesel previously?
Well, the biodiesel and the renewable diesel obviously had two different price points. While I don't want to get into specifics, contract specifics, everything's public. You could look at our contracts on the internet. I would say that the delta is probably, well, between biodiesel and between renewable diesel, it's less than $1 per gallon. And then I also want to point out that there are actually two retail sites that starting offering renewable diesel, one in Brooklyn and one in the Bronx. And we actually do send city vehicles there as well using our WEX credit card, and they're able to fuel with renewable diesel. And retail pricing is very much comparable to what we're paying through our contract. So I don't think anybody should really be looking at the cost. And again, your cost will depend on how much product you're looking for, how your procurement team bids out this contract. So for us, cost was minimal.
It really helps that you guys are able to centralize the purchase of so much fuel at once, I'm sure, in terms of the pricing you're able to get. I understand you can't go into the details, but I think that's a key consideration for the fleets in North Florida to understand that, committing to buying a large amount of the fuel makes a big difference in the price you pay for it, I'm sure. Um, Another question we have regarding this particular clean fuel, and I guess this I'm going to make this question general to um, biodiesel and renewable diesel since you've had experience with both. But did you have to overcome any kind of opposition or misconception about those fuels as you were rolling it out amongst various, operators of vehicles in your fleet?
Well, I could tell you, going from ULSD number 2 to biodiesel certainly was a education process. We had to educate agencies, operators, on the difference because everybody, I think a lot of people when you're trying to introduce a new fuel, there's always questions and concerns, and biodiesel. Certainly, one of the biggest issues with biodiesel is it kind of gels up in extremely cold weather, and if you leave it in a generator for 9 months, you might have problems starting that generator. But generally, on the vehicle side, we really didn't have any major issues or complaints. But again, biodiesel has certain properties. But the good news is that renewable diesel was very easy to introduce because of its ASTM, which is D975, which is the same for ULSD number 2. So it was really a drop-in fuel. So there was really nothing to convince anybody. Basically, if telling them it's just a drop-in fuel. So with that said, it was much easier to implement renewable diesel than going from ULSD, I think, to biodiesel. So with that said, again, what did we have to do on the fuel side? You had to basically update the PBS certificates. You had to ensure that the painting of the fill ports was completed. You had to ensure that all your signage was completed. And again, once that was done, it was very easy for the city to move into renewable diesel. So with that said, again, convincing people, drivers, fleet agencies, anyone, to go from biodiesel to renewable diesel was very, very easy.
Thanks, Harrison. You're multitasking beautifully there. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Did you see somebody walk in?
Yeah, but
Yeah,
yeah,
that
this,
actually is our deputy commissioner, Keith Kerman. He's our chief fleet officer, and again, he basically keeps driving this program. Without Keith, I don't think we would be able to be doing all this great work.
okay. Yeah, just to pause on a couple of things you said and make sure that the audience has all the information they need. When you said drop-in fuel, it means exactly what you said. It means that that fuel with no modification whatsoever to the vehicle can be pumped straight into a standard diesel vehicle, basically without any further thought or consideration about the properties of that fuel,
Yep, absolutely.
which is different than biodiesel
Yes,
in most cases.
correct.
So I
And
want to make
and
sure.
and when we started implementing renewable diesel here in the city, it's funny. I got a call from New York State DEC, and they wanted to know about it because they didn't have a lot of information, because we had to update our PBS certificates, and they actually they were happy to hear. And I reached out to them. I said, the city of New York is going to be, all city agencies are going to be moving from biodiesel to renewable diesel. And I gave them, the spec sheets, and I told them that, it was the same ASTM as ULSD number two. And once they heard that, they were like, oh, no problem. Just paint your fill port, turquoise, update your PBS certificate, and make sure your signage is okay. And that was it. It wasn't like we had DEC inspectors like the next day looking at everything and trying to fine us for anything that they might have seen that wasn't completed. So they were very helpful in the transition, and they basically said, yeah, we'll give you a couple of months to update everything, but good luck. And they called me back a couple of months later and they said, where are you buying it from? So you could see New York State start to get interested in the product as well. So I think that was a great story.
Another kind of compare and contrast regarding biodiesel and renewable diesel I want to ask you about. So some folks in North Florida can remember when there were small producers of biodiesel locally. They were collecting, waste grease, waste fats, and they were essentially refining it locally. In fact, the city of Jacksonville and St. Johns County at one point had programs within their government operations that were doing that. And over the years, those programs folded up
Mm-hmm.
and are no longer existing. So I think there is this perceived challenge that without, local production, then where do we get these fuels from? So, and I know that, also, renewable diesel is not produced locally in Florida at the moment. I'm fairly certain that it's not produced locally in New York City. So how do you get the fuel? How do you get your hands on this stuff? What was that process like so people can hear how you did it?
Yeah, I mean, if people are familiar with renewable diesel, you'll know that California has done a big implementation of renewable diesel, and that's what we did. We reached out to them to get some ideas on what to do, how to create a spec, how to create a bid. And I would just, again, if you're in Florida, I'm sure, again, you have access to, there's a number of different, the Clean Fuels Alliance. You could reach out to them. I could certainly send you all the information, but I would basically, and that's what we did too. We partnered with some companies that specialize in promoting like the farmers that produce the ingredients that go into this, like agricultural vegetable oils or animal fats, or and I think that's the way to find your vendors. Do your market research. Again, that's what we did. We did our market research.
Okay, great. And, and for the listeners in Florida, the Florida, does, I think, intend to gear up to start to produce renewable diesel locally. There was just a news story recently that there are some projects starting up in Central Florida to, leverage some of the agricultural lands that were previously devoted to production of oranges. Sadly, that is not a major crop in Florida anymore, but could be and may be a source for renewable diesel going forward. So stay tuned on that. It may be coming to the agricultural scene in Florida shortly. So let's roll the clock back a bit, Harris and Gary. I think I can imagine a lot of people listening to this thinking like, wow, I am impressed that so much activity is going on in New York City with respect to renewable diesel or electricity. You've got one of the largest fleets, you got the largest municipal fleet in America. You're using huge amounts of those fuels. But how did it start? I mean, Rome wasn't built in a day. New York City certainly wasn't built in a day. Your program has probably evolved over many years. How did this begin? I mean, what were the drivers of this? Because we've got fleets on the phone here who haven't used alternative fuels yet. So I think it would help for them to hear how it starts.
Well, you know, it started, I would say, about 11 years ago. And again, it started small, but the key for us was to just start, you know, with like biodiesel, and then moving from biodiesel to electrification, and then moving from electrification to renewable diesel. I think, and Gary could talk a little bit about, his thoughts on how we started, how we move this and where we are now. Gary, you have any thoughts on that?
So I started a decast fleet 10 years ago. 10 years ago in New York City's fleet, we didn't have a whole lot of fully EV vehicles. We had a Nissan Leaf with very limited range. And within 2 to 3 to 4 years, we saw the movement of electric vehicles go in one direction, forward. What did we see? We saw bigger vehicles, better quality of vehicles, better range on vehicles, and it's because of forward-thinking policies. It's because of forward-thinking people like Deputy Commissioner Keith Kerman, uh, people like Executive Director Harris Kaplan, and alike. Not wanting to just settle for the norm, not wanting to settle for the mundane, what's known, to push the envelope a little bit and see and learn. Can this be done, and can it be done on scale? I mean, it's what I'll give you an example. I was the very first fleet manager in the city of New York of an all-electric car share fleet. Think about that. None of these vehicles have DC fast charge capability. 50 to 100 cars, actually no, it was 50 to 75 cars, all with car share technology, not being able to fast charge and figuring out the dynamics of that. And it's just having buy-in from your user groups, explaining to them that this is a good for themselves, for society, for their families. I always tell people when I talk about renewable diesel and there's a bit of a they people make a kind of a face where they're like, and I'm like, it's American made fuels, made in America, used by Americans. You can't get any more patriotic than that.
Um, Thanks for that, Gary. We have a question in the chat that I think relates to one of your comments. You talked about the slow rise, or it started small, but it rose quickly with EVs and aided and abetted by the major advances that are occurring in the technology, whether it's batteries or the charging technology, and or the manufacturers really committing to it, and now it's widely available, as you said earlier, for any kind of light duty application. Um, and then for the medium duty, you've got a lot of plug-in options. But that ultimately means that you have to provide the charging infrastructure, and you just alluded to doing that for a car share fleet. But I'm sure that the challenge just continues to grow with how do we keep these vehicles charged? And I think that's something that fleet managers, when they think about electric, they might not be the first thing that comes to mind, but as they start to bring vehicles into their fleet, they certainly start to confront it. So I'm curious how you are dealing with the dynamics of charging so many electric vehicles in various locations across the city.
Well, we work directly with our energy supplier, Consolidated Edison of New York City, and basically they are the power suppliers for us. We support them in any way that we can. They support us as best as they can as well with rehabbing the grid and what have you, helping with grant money for solar carports and whatnot. Um, as we rolled out our EV car share program, as we removed traditional gas vehicles to electric vehicles, we looked at where a majority of vehicles park. And if a fast charge plug option was available, that car was procured. If it was not available at the time, then obviously the slower charge was procured. And then site surveys were done. It is very imperative to do a site survey. I don't know your infrastructure in Florida. I don't know how old the buildings are, but at minimum, once if you have a 110 outlet, you could plug a car in, it'll charge. It might take you all night till next morning, but duty cycles for most light duty vehicles is about 4 to 5 hours with a replenishment time of 10 to 12 hours plugged in. So that might work. However, as you grow out your fleet and start to dabble more and more in the electric vehicle space, you're going to need to make sure that your infrastructure is there, site surveys are done correctly. Um, the grid supplying power to your garages is there. If it's not, upgrades definitely necessary. Um, and then don't forget, you are the Sunshine State. So one would assume a couple of solar carports might actually work in your favor. Um, you know, I've found that when you park at a solar carport, you actually are, yes, you are charging the vehicle, but you're also getting a decent amount of shade. So, you're not sitting in the car burning up. If you have to, especially if you have work to do, paperwork, office work. Harris and I can tell you to nauseam how often we are literally, our laptops are literally on our laps, steering wheel jammed up behind it, and we're sending and receiving emails all day long about different problems and different issues that are going on in the world. So it's going back to the initial question, though, I would say it's figuring out your infrastructure, building it out, and talk to your energy providers and find out what is necessary to keep your fleet future proof. If that means that you have to also possibly invest in batteries, mobile storage units, something worth considering. You know, um, Florida has hurricanes. Maybe solar carports might not be the best option. Maybe an elevated platform for these charging stations, away from water or runoff of water or whatnot. It all depends on your situation and your location.
Can you talk a little bit more about the solar carport program in the city? Because I think it's really cool. And there's probably one thing that Floridians like more than all the sunshine, and that's shade. I mean, I think you're absolutely right about that, especially when we're talking about our cars.
hmm
There's nothing worse than getting into, your car after it's been sitting in the parking lot all day long and, having to deal with that air conditioner not coming on fast enough. So tell us a little
Agreed.
bit about that program.
So we have a solar carport program that we are running right now. I forget how many hundred units we have citywide. Um, they're located in multitude of locations, Parks Department facilities, Department of Environmental Protection, uh, wastewater treatment plants, housing complexes. New York City Housing Authority, NYCHA, has a handful of these solar carports for use by, NYCHA employees, city employees, and what have you. Um, I can always, if anyone is interested in the solar carport program, just feel free to drop me a line, send me an email, and I'll put you in contact with our sustainability team. They know that program inside and out, from the grant side to the repairs to everything.
Thanks, Gary. Well, here's a question I wanted to ask since I knew we were going to be on the phone with each other. Because one thing I find I'm so impressive about your program is how comprehensive it is and how, you have implemented alternative fuels uh, all throughout your fleet, even in applications that I think on the face of it seem like they're more difficult than say passenger vehicles. So what I'm talking about is, your first responder fleets, typically I think fleet managers look at those kinds of vehicles and think, I have such specific performance requirements for my police vehicles or my ambulance vehicles or my fire trucks. I have to have onboard power for these various systems, sirens, computers, air conditioning, even like, for K9 units, for example, or, those vehicles, they have to be heavier. They need to carry certain equipment. I need room for that. They have longer duty cycles. So I'm very curious about how you guys looked at those problems, faced them down, and figured out how to make clean fuels work so that the folks in North Florida can understand that where there's a will, there's a way, because you guys have done it.
We have a K9 unit that's a F-150 Lightning EV, so it can be done.
How do you attack those issues though? I mean, how did you sort through those pockets of like doubt regarding certain vehicles seemingly being too specialized for alternative fuels?
I could speak on that. So it's all about education and talking with, your customer base, and operators and fleet directors are our customers. And again, I also want to add that I've introduced a Goodyear soy tire to city agencies for the light duty fleet. And we've gone through about 2,000 tires. And again, people were concerned that they was soy in the treads. They were concerned that they wouldn't, operate like a regular tire. But we've had no issues, and I continue to push this program. This morning, I met with Goodyear. I met with the Department of Sanitation. They're also testing waste hauling tires that have a percentage of soy in the tire, and the results came out very positive, and they're looking to expand this testing on more collection vehicles. So, like anything with renewable diesel, or with EVs, or with anything that's sustainable, it's about educating, introducing, then educating, and then being there for any questions, any concerns, and then helping to resolve any issues. Because listen, we're in fleet. There's issues. Of course, there's issues. There's always going to be issues. Fleet is 24/7, and we get all the calls regarding any issues, uh, related to whether it be a delivery of renewable diesel spilled, or spilled while making the delivery, or not all the product got into the fill, from the fill port. So things happen, and again, we just try to manage issues in a timely manner.
I imagine there have been some issues that seemed particularly thorny, that you managed to sort through and that you're pretty proud that you were able to get past. I'm curious if you'd be able to share any anecdotes about some of the most difficult challenges you've overcome in this alternative fuel space, just to give an illustration of you know, what some of the problems are that people can encounter, but how they can be overcome.
I could say that on EVs, there are operators who forget to charge, and their vehicles wind up needing to be towed. Uh, I think that again, it's all about education, and were there any really serious issues that was so challenging we couldn't continue to move forward, or stopped us right in our tracks? No, no. I mean, it seems like anything you want to do, or feel that you can do, you should be able to do, as long as you're upfront with your customers, upfront on the facts. And again, sanitation, I'll just give a quick example. Sanitation was concerned about renewable diesel, and they had a lot of questions, and they were tough questions, and they said, can we do something? What can we do? You got to convince us. So we actually met with the provider of the product. We also met with a company in the Midwest who was using renewable diesel in freezing cold weather at like a ski resort, just to get them on the line, and see what issues came up with them. And again, you just have to kind of, provide data, provide facts, and provide, a background on whatever you're trying to introduce. Does that help?
Definitely. Anything to add to that, Gary? I'm sure you've had some challenges that you've been able to push through. You're on mute, Gary, just in case you're giving us an interesting story there that we
Oh,
can't.
sorry. So repeat the question. It was basically like a challenging situation
Yeah,
with
I'm
okay, yeah.
always interested in
So
the.
I'll be honest with you. I'm sure many of you are parents, or have, have seen children grow up. Kids don't like to share. They grow up and become adults who don't like to share. So trying to get people to share vehicles was very challenging. Oh my God. And especially since they're EVs. like Harris was saying, people forget to plug them in, this, that, the other. Who's responsible for what? Oh, they left tools in the car, yada, yada, yada. However, when you explain to them, in a very honest, upfront manner, listen, the reason we're doing this is because we have to. We have to reduce fleet ceiling. We have to increase operational use of vehicles, you know, and once you get buy-in from the end user, life becomes a whole lot easier. Um, a lot of people will initially looked at EVs and they scoffed and they said, um, this will never work. And I, for one, have been driving a DCAS issued Bolt for Chevy Bolt now for uh, about 5 years, 6 years, and outside of a few maintenance issues here and there, I have no problems with it. It works. It works really well. Um, you know, uh, Other times, you know what it is? I feel that a lot of times you have the pushback from operators, you have the pushback from whoever, because they just don't understand the technology or their resistance to their reluctance to change is what it is. We are all set in our own ways when it comes to certain things. But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't be open to the idea of doing something differently. And it's getting buy-in from them. You know, um, Case in point, we ask operators every year when they take the defensive driving curriculum, tell us what it is that you want on your vehicle, and we will do our best to accommodate, whether that be cross-sectional mirrors, backup cameras, 360 cameras. A lot of the project work that we've done is because of operators saying they want this, and they're happier for it.
Good advice, Gary. That whole generating buy-in and doing the educational work is something that the Clean Fuels Coalition in North Florida really, takes as part of its mission, and that's part of what we're here to do today. The next question. Oh, here's my next question. So we had a question in the chat about procurement. A lot of our fleets, like you, are government fleets in North Florida, and procurement is its own kind of challenging aspect of government on its own. Curious, how do you go about procuring your vehicles? Do you use a state contract? Do you have a city controlled contracting mechanism? And is this all integrated into the city's budget? And how do grants fit into your procurement process?
We have we use the state OGS contract as a OGS system as a contract way mechanism for buying vehicles. That's one. Procurement works with them, with our procurement team, with the citywide procurement team to figure out what we can buy versus what we can't buy. Um, Usually we piggyback off of the California contract. We use OGS, GSA. Um, I think once in a blue we've used I think it's BIT. Um, and then when it comes to what we were buying, it's basically because of executive orders. We were, mandated to buy EVs. We were mandated to switch to an all electric fleet. We were mandated to do so many things. Um, so I can't really touch on more on the procurement side because it's not a side that I necessarily have dabbled with. Um, and if anyone is interested, I could put you in contact with our in-house procurement person for fleet, as well as our citywide procurement team.
Yeah, I'd like to say that procurement certainly is always a challenge, and we at Fleet have biweekly meetings with procurement to track how our requests, whether it be for contracts or for you know uh, new vehicle acquisitions or renewal of contracts. I think it's important for the fleet staff to either have their own in-house procurement person or like DCAS, we have a line of service where we have a procurement arm that handles most of our requests. We're the subject matter experts, but procurement is able to take what we want to do and put that into an idea and a bid or a negotiated acquisition or a use of a state contract. So that's the way we operate here at DCAS. But I'm sure every municipality related to people who are on the call have their own uh, methods for procurement. I'd like to hear from one of the larger uh, municipalities to see how they, conduct, their procurement process, if that's possible.
Well, I know that some here in North Florida, and it may not be the same in New York, so I'm curious to know, have had issues sourcing the kinds of vehicles that they wanted to get. Like y'all mentioned the F-150 Lightning. For the longest time, it seemed like it was a very difficult vehicle to obtain in our region, even though there was demand and interest for it. Have you had any problems with being able to source the kinds of vehicles that you wanted to get at any given moment?
Yeah, we every municipality goes through the same rigors. Shortage of vehicles, shortage of supplies to produce the vehicles, labor, materials, whatever. Um, we had issues with delivery. We did. We had to hold on to some vehicles longer than we wanted to. It's just the name of the game.
Right. I think it's helpful to hear that everyone's dealing with it, even the biggest of the big cities. One thing you mentioned, Gary, that I'm sure people on the phone here noted was that part of what you're doing is resulting from mandates. Those mandates, I mean, typically speaking, don't exist where we're operating. So it's in some ways a different sort of playing field for folks here. And so this question is tough for you guys to answer, I know, because it's sort of like a counterfactual, but what kind of advice would you have for folks who don't have a mandate in going about um, adopting alternative fuels? Because it sounds to me, listening to you guys, that you guys are really strong believers in this and have seen many benefits from it, such that, you know, I don't get the sense that you're just doing this because you're being told to do it. So I'm curious what you could share for folks if you could put them yourself in their shoes who don't have this kind of mandate that they're operating under.
Well, I could give an example. So, uh, in the past uh, month or so, we have a different message from Washington, D.C., and there's no mandate for electrification. There's no mandate for renewable diesel. There's not a lot of sustainability mandates coming from Washington, but we're still going to do it because we know it's the right thing to do. And again, regardless of whether there's incentives or programs that benefit implementation of new products, new vehicles, or any other new technology, we're just going to continue to do it regardless. So you just have to kind of take it upon yourself as a manager to just do what you think is right and continue to be as green as possible if that's what you want to do, and use every tool in your tool chest to complete that. Does that help people?
Think it does. Let's talk a bit, or as we get close to wrapping up, about what those benefits have been. I mean, obviously there are sustainability benefits to alternative fuels. That's improved air quality, reduced emissions. You certainly mentioned that maybe emphasis is changing around that in Washington, D.C. So let's talk about all the benefits. I think people often don't understand that there are multiple benefits that go well beyond just the green. So I'm curious if you can share some of the things you've observed in terms of your listening to your operators about what you see these benefits are and how this is sticking, in New York City.
Well,
The
I could say with
carrying cost of
oh,
vehicles.
yeah, absolutely. The cost to maintain and repair EV light duty and medium duty vehicles are less than gasoline vehicles. Um, so that's a cost savings on renewable diesel. Other than the green and sustainability characteristics, we have comments from chiefs at sanitation who say that they don't have to smell the terrible diesel anymore, that now they're smelling a different product that's cleaner, and they know that their health is benefiting, especially when you're working in a garage with vehicles that are running and fueling. And again, that's another benefit. Gary, do you have any more?
No, I was just going to say like the overall carrying cost of vehicles is completely different for EVs than it is for the traditional ICE vehicle. Um, there's less parts to change. Granted, some of those parts could be a little bit more expensive on an EV, but there's less parts to change. You're not buying oil in bulk. You're not buying filters. You're not buying, you know, certain things that you would necessarily need on a regular traditional ICE vehicle. Um, on the Chevy Bolt that I drive, we change tires a couple of times, wiper blades, topped off fluids, basically the bare minimum of PMs, made sure the lights worked, and that was it. So your carrying costs will go down substantially. I don't have a dollar amount ballpark yet. I could definitely provide one offline. I see Mr. Lee Ganis is asking. Um, and it's just, not for nothing. Don't we have a moral obligation to leave this planet better than we found it? I mean, that should be our end goal. We are fleet professionals. We are in this industry not by choice. I'm sorry, not forced into it. I've met people that are in fleets that because they love vehicles, they love operations, they love the way things work. And we are on the cusp of major change. We have electrification going on nationwide. We have renewable diesel. We have the ability to effectively change the future of fleet as we know it. Why shouldn't we?
That's pretty inspiring, Gary. I mean, it's true that, not too long ago, there weren't all these choices out there. But now we're, you know, somewhat blessed in having a lot of options, and many of them are better than what we've been using in the past. And that's part of the reason why the North Florida Clean Fuels Coalition exists, is just to help people understand what those options are, understanding that there may be one that's right for you. There's no one silver bullet. New York City's using electricity where it makes sense. They're using renewable diesel where it makes sense, and then finding all of those applications. It's pretty exciting and pretty inspiring. Let's do one more question before we wrap up. Thanks everyone for attending today. What does the future hold for alternative fuels in New York City, Gary and Harris?
Harris, you go first.
Sure. So right now, I think being that renewable diesel was implemented in September 2023, we're going to continue to use renewable diesel for the next few years. We are looking at renewable diesel in heating oil. That's something that we've started to look at. And we're also looking at renewable gasoline. We're doing some research on that as well. So that's really what we have up front, you know, as far as just to look at in terms of additional fuel types or how we could expand the use of renewable diesel to our buildings.
Anything to add, Gary?
Um, I think that also, I mean, I know this is a fueling discussion, really, energy discussion, but I also believe that, changing the type of fueling we're using, renewable versus non-renewable diesel, electrification, getting rid of the traditional ICE vehicle, should also work hand in hand with safety. Why have a better and a more efficient vehicle if your vehicle isn't also as safe as it could possibly be? So, what we're doing is, yes, we have a truck running on renewable diesel. It's running on the best, cleanest fuel we can find. Okay, let's make it the safest vehicle that you can find. Truck side guards, underride protection, cameras, intelligent speeds assist, backup sensors, and what have you. You have to look at your fleet, and everyone's fleet is similar but different, I say. Everyone has a police force, but everyone doesn't necessarily have the same vehicles in their police forces. So you have to look at your fleets and think to yourselves, what is it that we need to do to stay on the cusp of technology, to stay on to future-proof our fleet. Um, you know, whether it be renewable gasoline or I don't know what the future really holds. I know that with an open mind, we all will be better for it.
Thank you so much, Gary and Harris. How inspiring it's been to be able to talk to the largest municipal fleet in the country and also the most sustainable fleet in the country, proving, I think, without a shadow of a doubt, that if you can do it there in New York City, you can do it anywhere. You can do it in North Florida. We're the North Florida Clean Fuels Coalition. We're here to bring you unbiased, unfiltered information that helps your fleet decide what's right for you. Thanks for spending an hour with us. Thanks again, Harris. Thanks again, Gary. Um, and I mean, thank you both. And we will be back with more content in the future. So stay tuned to the North Florida Clean Fuels Coalition and have a great afternoon.
Take care. Thank you so much for the
Thank you,
invite.
everybody. Nice meeting everybody. Have a great day.
Take care.
Take care. Bye.
Thank you.